All right, you've got 7:01 and you are live.
Okay, this is the February 1st meeting of the Common Council in the city of Oneonta, and the clerk would call the roll.
Mayor Drenick,
Here.
Councilmember Murphy.
Here.
Councilmember Davies.
Here.
Councilmember Risberger.
Here.
Councilmember Lapari-Shu.
Here.
Councilmember Carson.
Here.
Councilmember Harrington.
Here.
Councilmember Rafter.
Here.
Councilmember Falco.
Here.
Okay, well, everyone is here, and I'm going to ask you if you would join the members of Boy Scout Troop 23 and Girl Scout Brownie Troop 60133 in our Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Scout salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Two.
All right, well, thank you for them, right? Is that wonderful? All right, before we move into petitioners and public hearings, I want to just take a quick moment at the top here. We lost a member of our community on Friday, as everyone knows, a member of the SUNY Oneonta community, a friend to a group of guys who grew up together, a young son and grandson, and our hearts ache for his family. It was a tragic day, but the city of Oneonta performed as you would hope that they would. I received this note by way of Fox Hospital. Chief Knapp, I wanted to reach out to you to extend our great appreciation for the assistance provided to us yesterday, January 27th, in the care of our critically ill hypothermic patient. The teamwork between your department and our ED was tremendous in giving this patient the best chance at survival. Please extend our gratitude to your teams. Karen Patterson, Nurse Manager, Emergency Services. So I told our city administrator that I was going to read this letter, and I asked if there was a department that he wanted to single out for appreciation. So he sent me this, and I think it's perfect, so I'm just going to read it. He writes, thanks to the city employees involved for all doing their absolute best in response to this tragic incident, including those who came upon Tyler and called for emergency services, the first responders and their paramedics who administered aid and transported the patient to Fox and then to Bassett Hospital, some of whom stayed with him the entire time and assisted at the hospital, and our police department who continued to conduct a thorough investigation. So thank you very much for that, Greg. And I want to thank SUNY President Cardeye and Chief of Staff McMullen for your communication and assistance. It was an awful exercise, but it was a testimony to the trust in our relationship, and it gives me confidence in our preparedness to handle whatever the future may hold. So with that, folks, I'd like to open this to petitioners and then public hearings. Carrie?
There are no petitioners and we have no public hearings scheduled.
Okay. Well, in that case, we'll move along to reports of the boards and commissions, starting with the Planning Commission. That's Dave Risberger. Dave?
Yes, thank you. And give me just a second here. Okay, we Planning Commission met on January 19th. There were 4 areas of discussion. The first one was with a petitioner, Steve Sisselman, who came in complaining about the parking lights from the illegally enlarged parking lot of the chiropractor behind his property. And Mr. Sisselman has a medical condition which is extremely painful with bright lights, and the lights from the cars parking in this parking lot travel right into his house. The chiropractor was told not to park in the parking lot, but he was reportedly doing so anyway. I don't know if this has changed since the 19th. He did say that he would back into the lot to avoid headlight intrusion, but reportedly has not done so, at least not as of the 19th. And this was the parking lot was supposed to be they were supposed to apply to the Planning Commission to be able to expand this, and that has not happened yet. Paul Vandersomen, this is he is the owner of the tennis club on Rose Ave. This was a sketch plan conference. He wants to subdivide the property into 4 parcels. 3 of them would have access from Rose Avenue, and the 4th has access from Sand Street. His purpose for doing this is to make the property easier to sell. They've had no good offers so far on the entire property. And this is in the CI zone with no setbacks. A subdivision is an unlisted action, so they'd need a short environment, and I didn't finish that sentence, review. The code office is planning on working with Paul to fill out a short form environmental assessment form and submit, and the Planning Commission will review it at the next meeting. The Gamma Phi Delta, this is the sorority at 23 Elm Street. This is the ongoing saga since last May. They do not have a special use permit. We've gone back and forth asking them to come in front of the Planning Commission. The number of times they said they would be there and then they don't show. And so as of right now, the Planning Commission said that they are in violation of the zoning code, operating illegally as a sorority in that house, and they're asking the city and code office to take action. So Mark, I would ask you if you could follow up maybe tomorrow to get an update on what's happening with that. Lastly, Paul, and you and I could talk tomorrow if you want also. Lastly, Paul and Barbara Goglia over at Thorn Street, they came looking to get a lot line adjustment between 2 properties that they own. This was a type 2 seeker and it was approved by the board. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Dave, does anybody have any questions or comments for Dave? John, is that your hand?
Go ahead, Len.
Len, I saw your hand.
What kind of challenges is the Planning Commission kind of forecasting for the property down there off of Rose Avenue? I know that there's multiple buildings. I'm just wondering what the Planning Commission is kind of thinking there.
I think at this point they're taking it one step at a time, and as far as selling the property, I mean, that's really up to the owner, how he wants to sell it, as long as it can be divided. So I think the first step is just to fill out the environmental assessment form and review that, and look at what plans he has. He hasn't really brought forward any plans other than to subdivide it. I think what he wants to be able to do is subdivide it so that if somebody wants to, they can build on those properties, and then possibly even have the tennis club standing. But that's just my guess. But I think it's a very difficult property to divide. And the difficult part is that nobody has wanted to buy the club is in its entirety, and it's got a very large piece of property behind there that most people don't see. That's the area that's accessed from Sand Street. It's very possible that after looking at this, Paul may choose to subdivide it differently. I just don't know.
Well, I think you said it well. It's a difficult property that has multiple access points, but is still a big challenge because it's next to a very large embankment with other homes that are up there.
Right.
So I was just curious if the Planning Commission, the group, had talked about.
No, I think everybody's reserving judgment right now until, because as of right now, it's just a sketch plan of what he wanted to do, and it was just a quick division that he had on paper. So I think once they review the environmental assessment form, that may bring forward an awful lot of questions. So hopefully they'll get them answered.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Luke?
Oh, Luke, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you and the commission, Dave, for taking the time. I've been working with Mr. Sisselman on this issue for a little while now, and I really appreciate you bringing it up to council. It does sound like, and you know better than I do, very, very painful condition he's dealing with, and appreciate the time you're giving it.
Luke, since that's in your ward, do you have any update that you know of on that you could share?
No, other than I believe, Mayor, were you in contact with Mr. Sisselman?
Yeah, and actually, I'm going to defer to Greg, who's come on here. So go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I have an update, actually. I've spoken to David Bicinich, and since the meeting that Dave was at, he has applied for site plan review and should be on the February Planning Commission agenda. And he's also stated to me that, you know, in the time being, he's going to discontinue parking in that back newly created parking area to try to alleviate the issue.
Thank you, Greg.
Good.
Welcome.
Hopefully that'll solve the problem.
Yeah. Scott, you got your hand up?
Yeah, Dave, I don't know if you know this or Luke, but since my grandparents lived in that ward for a long time and I grew up down there, that was divided once before the tennis club got it. Oneonta Oil and Fuel a long time ago used to have a shop down there as well, just off to the side of it. So, I mean, dividing back, I mean, it's not like it's a historic thing that's never been done before.
Yeah, I think the question, at least for me, was looking at how it was divided. It looks like it's very difficult to divide that back up. So but you know, I don't know if it's the same dividing line that they were going at. I don't think it is, just based on where the lines are. It's really based on what's currently there, but I could be wrong. But you know, I'm going to really reserve judgment, and I'm sure everybody else is, until we see what Paul can come up with and what the environmental review says.
Great. Any other questions or comments for Dave? All right, Dave, thank you very much. And we'll move on now to the Commission on Community Relations and Human Rights, and that's Councilmember Murphy. Ooh.
Thank you, Mayor. The commission met at approximately 7 o'clock on the 27th, last Thursday, and had a lot of beginning of the year things that we were taking care of. As you all folks might remember from last meeting, Commissioner Joyce Miller has retired and has been replaced by a new commissioner by the name of Anita. She is actively involved up at the college and is really involved with a lot of mental health and social work projects with a variety of different constituencies. And it sounds like she's going to be a really good fit on the commission. The commission named Shannon McHugh to serve as chair for this year, as well as Deandra Sangetti Daniels as the vice chair, and Reverend Marty Swords Horrell as the secretary. We have a couple of events coming up and a couple of adjacent events that aren't necessarily by commission members, but are closely aligned with our mission. There will be a 3 p.m. MLK celebration on MLK Day. It will be online. It's not going to be at the city or the church this year. There is also, sorry, looking at my notes here. Another big thing for the commission, something that is actually just occurred today. If anyone listening or on council knows of any folks deserving or feeling they deserve praise for their efforts in the city of Oneonta for the Trailblazer Award, which acknowledges the efforts of women throughout the city of Oneonta that have been particularly impactful in the city's life. That application just went live today. And the deadline for this, I believe, is March 7th, according to my notes. And we're also working on a fundraising video for the commission, as well as getting together some presentations for some parades through hometown. Specifically 4th of July parade, and working on Juneteenth coming up in June.
Terrific. Thank you, Katie.
Hey, the Trailblazer Award, you said that went live. Is that found on the commission's page on the city website?
I hate to do this. Carrie, would you mind? I believe it is.
It is on the city clerk's website. All applications are provided to our office. We then forward them on to the commission. So you'll find it on our social media, on the commission's social media, and the city clerk's website.
Thank you, Carrie.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments for Luke? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank
Luke.
you.
And then we'll move on to the CLIC, Quality of Life and Infrastructure Committee. That's Dave Risberger.
Yes, thank you. We met on January 24th. It was our first meeting under this name. This is a committee with Scott Harrington, Mark Davies, and myself. We had a few guests at the meeting, our city administrator, Greg Mattice, Mayor Drenick, and Catherine Pollock, and Mike Forster Rothbart from the Environmental Board. So we had two topics of discussion. The first is the ongoing creek naming proposal by the Environmental Board. This is where they have identified 6 creeks within the city limits and an additional 2 within the town of Oneonta. And they're looking to get the schools involved in naming, giving a name for the creeks. And they are actually, although we have given the go-ahead in the city, the town is not just yet. So they're presenting this project to the town board on February 9th. And they're looking forward to hopefully getting their approval on the idea. So far, Greater Plains, Valley View, and the Oneonta Middle School each has a teacher who's stepped forward to take on the project. So they're still looking for teachers at the high school level and at Riverside. Mr. Rothbart is confident they will have a teacher when before the next phase. April and May is more of the education component for the students. And they're hoping sometime between May and June to have a name presented to the environmental board for each one of the creeks. Their goal is to have the names complete or the recommended names completed by the end of the school year. And there's no deadline for submitting the names to the U.S. Geological Society. So they do have time with that. So the other item that was brought forward is the levels of deer in Center City. And this was brought forward by Catherine Pollock. This is an area, as you can imagine, is pretty controversial. It was controversial the last time I remember there was a big discussion, which is about 10, 12 years ago, I believe, when John Nader was mayor at the time. And some of the items discussed were concerns with the rising deer population, damage to property, safety with driving concerns. So far, there have been 26 animal-caused accidents in the city in 2020 and 11 in 2021. Animal meaning that could be deer, it could be other animals. We just are not sure. Other issues were tick-borne diseases. If the levels of deer rise, you're going to have possibly the tick-borne disease level rise in the city as well. And also the safety concerns for the deer and interactions with property. So there was one example was Ms. Pollock waking up to find a deer tangled in their soccer net out in their backyard, and they had to get help to extract it. So the environmental board has contacted Celinda Brandon at the DEC, and she's going to be speaking at their next board meeting on February 8th. So they're hoping to receive some direction on what options they have. There's many solutions. There's positives and negatives for each of them. In the past, they've talked about trapping and shooting, education programs. 10 plus years ago, the council discussed such things as feeding stations outside of the city, which sterilization in the food, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing was really, nothing moved forward outside of the initial conversation though. But some of the things that this board looked at is, how do we know that we actually have a problem and that the levels of deer are not just the same as they've been for the last 20 years or so? So we're hoping that there's that, and also, is this a priority problem or just another nuisance? Do we want to develop some sort of survey for the public? If we do, what would be the goal of the survey? Is it a survey really needed? So this is something that we're hoping the DEC can give us guidance on, especially based on what other communities have been doing lately, because this is not just an Oneonta issue. It's becoming more of an issue everywhere. One thing that did come out is there have been multiple reports of people in the city purposely feeding the deer, which is a ticketable offense. We don't think people realize that. But the question also came up is, who issues tickets? The DEC, the code office, OPD. We just don't know. Everybody did agree that we should try to educate people first, and educate first, ticket later. So one of the ideas was issuing a nixle message, and the environmental board said that they would develop that message for the city to send out. So Mark Davies, if at the environmental board meeting, if you could get us some information on the progress on that, that would be fantastic. If they could develop that, that would save everybody time and effort. So I think this is at the initial phase of the discussion, and I think that. Well, I'm curious to see where this goes. I think I have a feeling it's going to go a little bit more of a deeper discussion than it was years ago. So that's my hope anyway.
Terrific. Thank you, David. Anybody have any questions or comments for David? Okay, no. In that case, thank you very much, Dave. So in that case, we'll go to Len Carson, Councilman Carson, for the Finance and Human Resources Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. We met, get to my notes. We met on January 24th, and from our meeting, we vetted through the list of agenda items and got us to what you see tonight on the consent agenda, motions 3 through 8. I guess I could highlight motion 5, where the Police Sergeants Association came before us in 2020 and asked for a 1-year extension, or excuse me, 21, and asked for a 1-year extension, recognizing that we are having financial difficulties here in the city due to COVID. And as a council, we accepted that offer. They've done that again. And we did have quite a bit of discussion on that at finance, and decided ultimately to bring it to full council under that same agreement. And motion 6 and 7 are just basically procedurals, right-of-ways for NYSEG to provide utilities to the new Deed Street lofts. And there might have been some questions on number 8, where Fire Chief Brian Knapp brought an idea to our committee of utilizing 8 new firefighters to do interfacility transport. This is a request from Fox Hospital, and at this time there's no commitment. What we're asking you is to approve the city entering into a grant application through SAFER, and it'll be a multi-month process to get through that, at which we will have a full business plan presented by Chief Knapp and City Administrator Mattice on the overall. So tonight, all we're asking is that you allow city staff to process this grant application. There is no formal commitment by the City of Oneonta by doing this. And I think that's it. I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions? David.
Dave?
Yeah, Len, number 8. Are you saying maybe I'm not understanding that. Well, this would be a grant application for an additional 8 firefighters that would do strictly transportation for the hospital, or
No, the overall scope that they gave us, and remember, we're at the, say, 50,000 foot elevation on this one.
Right.
Was that these 8 firefighters, the funding initially would come from the SAFER grant. They will be integrated into the department as everyone else. What it does is it provides enough firefighters that for the hours of 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., a 12-hour shift, if there's a need for a interfacility transport through Fox Hospital, that 2 of the firefighters would come off the active shift and go into that transport.
So this is for 8 additional firefighters.
But they're not strictly for the interfacility transports. The funding will be through the SAFER grant, and that's why they're the city staff are applying for it.
Okay, but we would be, let's say we got this grant, we would be hiring 8 additional firefighters using this grant money, and the purpose would be to work with our other firefighters, and when they need to, they would also be called to do the transports. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions for Len on this or any other subject in finance? No. All right, so for something completely different, we'll go to Len Carson for Economic Development Committee's first meeting.
Mayor, we met Tuesday, January 25th, and this was our initial meeting, our first meeting out of the gates. Councilmember Katie Lepari-Shu and Councilmember Emily Falco are also part of the committee, and we had special guest Ed May and Al Rubin that joined us. And I thought it was a very exciting and engaging conversation that we had well over an hour. Some of the highlights, we asked our guests to just kind of give us their perspective. And if you don't know, these are 2 individuals that have been local developers for decades. And so they just kind of gave us an overview of what they thought. The attitude of our government. So the government in the process, it needs to be streamlined. A suggestion was to look at Maine as an example of how you could do that. Red tape process was designed, but now we're understanding that you need somebody to champion that all the way through. That's where Mayor Herzig did well. He championed several residential projects through. There was also brought up about negative barriers, and I thought that was a good one. What does it take to get it done? Suggested about SUNY downtown, more public-private partnerships, student fees, attract diverse population, use Destination Oneonta to promote all businesses, existing businesses. Suggestion of a grocery store downtown, car share, changing the traffic pattern on Main Street. These are the ideas that were thrown around. Also, we're looking at New York State real property tax laws, sections 485A, B, and Q. If you don't remember, we briefly talked about these in 21 at the Finance Committee level. These were local laws that were established in 2013 by Mayor Miller and the council, and they were to spur economic development. Unfortunately, they had been sunsetted, and so we're looking to reinvigorate them, bring them back, and we're working on that for the next legislative committee meeting, trying to get the dust off. There is a little bit of a hiccup on section 485-Q. That was the residential one. It was designed primarily just for the city of Oneonta. The inside of it has parameters that say it's only good for communities that are between 13,000 514,000. Well, unfortunately, through the 2020 census, the city of Oneonta saw a reduction in our population. We're currently 13,079. And so I've made contact with Senator Oberrecker's office, and his staff is working to find out what needs to be done to amend that so that our city can readapt a local law, because that's all we're going to be doing is mirroring what's an existing state law into this. So that's the only one hanging up. So 485A and B should be able to get passed through at the local level. And we'll keep working on 45Q. Also was recently brought to our attention that our local school system utilizes a 10 gig fiber optic line system. And the idea of having a network created, say, from downtown Oneonta and spreading out, providing opportunity for entrepreneurs and existing businesses. So some of the items that our committee talked about the other day.
Other than that, you didn't really talk about too much. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Lynn? I was very happy with that first meeting. I've been very happy with the meetings of both the new committees. So kudos, guys. I want to move on to our health officer's report. And Diane, the floor is yours.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah, great. Yes. Okay, so bear with me while I get my screen share up. Can you see me? See the screen? Yes, good. Okay, so worldwide, cases continue to reflect the Omicron variant, but perhaps leveling off to some degree now with a total of over 373 million confirmed cases and over 5.6 million deaths. Fortunately, here in the United States, we've seen a sharp decline in cases, again reflecting what was anticipated from the Omicron variant. You can see here the number of cases is now close to 500,000. And finally, the hospitalizations and then are coming down. Unfortunately, the deaths are going up. As we've said before, that's a lagging indicator. And we can unfortunately expect those to be up and then hopefully come down. In New York State, the deaths have finally begun to decline. As you're aware, our numbers of cases declined before. We were one of the first states to have declining numbers of cases because we were one of the first states that had the surge. So now, in fact, both our hospitalizations and finally our numbers of deaths are in decline. So locally, I put these two slides up. I superimposed these two graphs. One is the top one is the whole state showing sort of the cases over time. And then the bottom one is Otsego County. And I just thought it was interesting. In Otsego County, you see our little blip in September of 2020. And then interestingly, you see sustained higher levels as the Delta variant sort of came along in the fall. And then we bumped way up with the Omicron variant. But also in Otsego County, as you can see, our numbers of active cases are declining. And that decline did occur a little bit after the downstate counties did. So here you see today's report from Otsego County, 46 new cases, many fewer than we'd seen previously, and now only 4 hospitalized patients. 1 new death was reported today, and there were 2 others since my last report to you 2 weeks ago. So we've had 9 deaths in the month of January thus far. And actually more cases in the month of January 2022 than any other month to date. What you may notice when you go to the county website is you're no longer seeing that graph of active cases with the green bars. So therefore, that's not why I am not sharing it with you this evening. Those numbers represented the active cases, and at some point in mid-January, that number exceeded 1,000. We had 1,000, more than 1,000 active cases in the county, which was pretty amazing. And the reason that data is not being reported to us anymore is the state is no longer keeping that data because of the numbers of cases, and because some of the change in guidance in terms of how long cases stay active in terms of mandatory isolation. They are not reporting out all active cases. So Heidi did tell me today that there will be some new graphics coming out. And so as soon as those are available, I will alert you to those. You can see here 11.9% 7-day average positivity. It was as high as, I think, 17% in mid-January. So that's also declining, which is great. It is higher, and most of the upstate counties are still higher than the metropolitan counties, which are now down in the single digits. The overall state positivity is 6.3% 7-day average. And again, that is primarily being driven by the metropolitan counties. Heidi did not have any data for me today in terms of percentage of cases which are vaccinated. She's trying to pull that together for year end. Her anecdotal sense is that it may be about 50-50. Here's the wastewater data. Our most recent data point is from the 20th of January, which actually declined a little from the 13th. However, the lab that reports this to us says the upward trend is continuing. Of interest, SUNY Oneonta has negligible positivity in their wastewater from the dorms, so that's encouraging. The SUNY tracker today reports from Oneonta there is only SUNY Oneonta, there's only one active case. So fingers crossed. Hartwick reports 3 active cases, I think. So that's a marked decline. Yes, 3 active cases, a marked decline from their 44 cases they had soon after students returned. So again, we're hopeful that we will not have more spread from the students. The county has had 2 booster clinics on SUNY campus for those returning students. Although students were mandated to be boosted when they came back, about 80% were. So again, our county has been working closely with SUNY to help get those students boosted, and those clinics have also been open to the public. There will be a clinic tomorrow at Oneonta High School to help boost those students between 12 and 17 who are eligible, and Heidi tells me that it will also be open to the public. These graphs I've shown you previously, they just point, and this is New York State specific numbers for vaccinated and unvaccinated relative to cases and hospitalizations. This first one is cases. Again, you can see the sharp decline, blue representing those unvaccinated persons, red vaccinated. It just, again, illustrates that those who are unvaccinated are much more likely to be positive, and both vaccinated and unvaccinated numbers are in decline. This is hospital admissions showing you similar trends. I did receive data from the Bassett Network today. I do not have a slide specific for that. Hospitalizations, while they have gone down in terms of county numbers very recently, they've been about stable for the Bassett Network in the last couple of months. Currently, there are 3 inpatients at Fox Hospital. Staffing remains a big issue. And as far, no one is able to tell me at what point the hold on elective surgeries will be for hospitals in our region. As you know, because of the capacity issues, which had mostly to do with staffing, all of the hospitals in the Bassett Network and most in the Mohawk Valley region have been on a stay in terms of elective surgeries. Also in terms of the Bassett Network data, there are still hospitalized patients who are vaccinated, but the majority of critically ill patients are those unvaccinated. This is just this is CDC, so this is nationwide, showing that Omicron variant still is pretty much the dominant and the only variant circulating. But again, I will certainly keep you updated if I hear anything different, especially responding to your question, Luke. This I thought was interesting. It takes you over a longer period of time. This is New York State specific. And you can see the gray was Delta that came along, and cases steadily increase in the state with Delta, and then that sharp rise as the Omicron became the dominant variant. Okay, some vaccines updates. As many of you know, yesterday, the FDA granted full approval to Moderna vaccine. So now that is a second, the Pfizer had received full approval. The Moderna is for those 18 and over. Over 211 million Americans are fully vaccinated, representing 64% of our population. Of note, this percentage is less than in many other countries, including most European countries. In New York State, that number is 74%. 74% of the entire population is fully vaccinated. However, Otsego County, that number is 60%. So not only are we less than New York State, we're less than the country as a whole. Other news is, and I think this just changed this afternoon. This was Pfizer is expected. I think Pfizer did actually ask the FDA to authorize its COVID vaccine for children ages 2 to 5. So that is hopefully, once it goes through the whole process, there is a potential that the vaccine will be available to children ages 2 to 5, perhaps by the end of this month. We're still seeing a very limited uptake in those children 5 to 12 for whom the Pfizer vaccine has been authorized. Hopefully that trend will change, and hopefully more people will get boosted. I just wanted to bring this up. This was a study published by the CDC, came out a little over a week ago. And you've seen this referenced, I think, in many of the newspapers, showing this study demonstrated that a booster dose was increased effectiveness, particularly when we're talking about the Omicron variant. So I'll just show you some graphics here. How they structured this study was comparing unvaccinated people to vaccinated people, and then determining from that the degree to which there was vaccine effectiveness in terms of keeping people out of the hospital. So during the time frame in which Delta was predominant, people who had received and were within 6 months of their 2 doses of an mRNA vaccine were 90%. The vaccine was 90% effective. That fell to 81% if it was over 6 months. But when they were boosted, it went back up to 94%. With the Omicron, the numbers were even more dramatic. 2 doses were only 81% effective at keeping people out of the hospital, and fell to 57% if it was more than 6 months. And however, with the booster, it went back up to 90%. So I just took a minute to go over all that with you, because I think these findings, their conclusion is these findings underscore the importance of being boosted. When I spoke with Heidi today, she did not know how many or what percentage of our local residents who were eligible had received their booster doses, but overall it is still a need that can be met and should be met. And I would absolutely encourage people who are not boosted, and it's been and it's 5 months now for both Pfizer and Moderna, those persons are eligible for boosters. And Again, the county is having clinics, and I think these are readily available at local pharmacies as well as in providers' offices. So that's my little pitch for boosters. Final update on masks. You may have seen that last week. A state Supreme Court judge ruled that the governor's mandate requiring everyone to wear masks indoors was unconstitutional. However, that was overruled by a state appeals panel of judges yesterday. So now we are back to having a mask mandate at least through February 10th. And up until, and with the ability to renew until March 2nd. So that is really all of my report. And I'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Diane. Yeah, Dave Risberger.
Thanks, Diane. That was a great update. It looks like things are looking better across Otsego County, or starting to look better, I dare say. Question I have for you, since it looks like the Otsego County hospitalizations are down somewhat from their high. What is the ICU capacity at Bassett, or in the Bassett network right now, since they don't just service Otsego County, they service many counties? Do you have that number at all?
I don't. I will get it for you. I will tell you, when I spoke to the network folks today, they were saying, again, their number of hospitalized patients is not down, but I don't know exactly what the capacity is. And I'm not even sure what criteria will be used to lift that stay on elective surgeries. But I will look into both for you.
Yeah, the last I looked a couple of weeks ago was up in the high 90s. So of how full they were. So yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Jorgensen? Any questions for Diane's dog?
I'm so sorry. All right, I'm gonna go mute myself and let my dog in. I'm so sorry.
Oh, we loved it. It was great. And you just plowed through. You are a professional. You definitely are.
I'm gonna go let him in now.
All right. Thank you, Diane, very much. All right, guys. Moving on to the city administrator's report. Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. This week, our openings, current openings, employment opportunities include bus drivers, as usual. Always looking for a couple full-time, at least one full-timer and several part-timers. We also have an exam announced. The filing deadline for firefighters is February 16th. So there's still time to get an application in. We have one current and two anticipated vacancies in that department, and we'll be processing candidates for inclusion in the April Academy. Speaking of the fire department, they've been busy lately. They've had several fires since our last meeting that they've helped out at. One at the Franklin Mountain house that had a fire in the middle of the night in the town of Oneonta within our fire district. We also had a couple of mutual aid calls recently. On the 28th, the fire department went to Morris to help out at a commercial garage fire, and just yesterday they went to Lawrence to help out the house fire. Also in the fire department, I wanted to give a shout out and a big thank you to our IAFF, that's the International Association of Firefighters, local president, Andy Turner, one of our firefighters who has been instrumental in setting up a peer support training that's going to be held for both fire and police department members. That's coming up in February. And that's something that obviously is it's a great opportunity for our members to be trained on peer counseling and how to help each other out in various ways. So we're looking forward to that. Thank you to Andy and the union. We have police interviews being conducted. Actually, they've been conducted. Several candidates are now being vetted with background checks. We're anticipating a couple of retirements, and we also have two current vacancies. So we could be looking at hiring up to 4, I believe, police officers for the spring academy. In Central Garage, we don't hear too much from them often on these updates, but I wanted to get them in because they're working hard every day and they're keeping things running. But one of the big efforts they undertake every year is inventory, which happens, at the end of December, beginning of January each year. It's quite an undertaking. It takes almost a week, 3 or 4 days for 2 or 3 employees to count all of their parts and do a full inventory. Every year after year since I've been here, they've always come in very close. It's really incredible how accurate they are throughout the year, but it is a necessary step to complete. But one of the things I thought was worth sharing is Charlie Effner, our fleet manager, has suggested that we reduce our inventory in a sense by limiting any parts that are $2 or less from our inventory. That doesn't mean we wouldn't have them. It just means we wouldn't be counting them, and they would be an expense as opposed to an inventory. And it's more of an accounting thing than anything, but what that would do would save time, not only in the annual inventory process, but also throughout the year and having to track those. So that's something that Charlie will be working with Ginny and finance to implement this year, hopefully. And another thing that they implemented last year in Sumter Garage was a paperless shop, which, as the name implies, is obviously moving to electronic work orders as opposed to paper work orders, which previously you had to write things out and then upload those, enter them after the fact. So they're really saving a lot of time and making some big strides down there to be more efficient. So kudos to them. DPW this winter, by my count, they've repaired 3 water main breaks. Most recently, they had an 8-inch water main break on Country Club Road in the town near Oneida Street. That one we found, we actually called in a leak detection company to help us pinpoint the location. That was estimated at 140,000 gallons per day leak, which is a fairly sizable one, of course. And they were able to repair that without having to issue any sort of boil water advisory, which is always preferable. We recently removed snow from long curves downtown Main Street and adjacent side streets, which is our typical practice after a foot or so of snow. You may hear some concerns or questions as to why it takes us a week or so to get out there and do that after a snowstorm. And the reason for that is just the way our contractual arrangements are now, with giving advance notice to employees to be able to change their schedule, and having a small enough department that we don't have enough coverage for multiple shifts 24/7 during the winter, so that we have to change everyone's schedule around. So we just ask for a little patience as we try to get to that if we do get more snow. The payroll team, which includes members from finance and personnel primarily, but really every department contributes in some way to this effort. They're working on an exciting project that we budgeted, which is upgrading our payroll and timekeeping software. That will allow us to save, I can't even tell you how many hours of time, days worth of time every 2 weeks when we do payroll, once that's implemented. That's something we just kicked off last week, and it'll probably take about 6 months to implement. So it'll be fully implemented this year. Community development, I just want to give a few grant program updates. We recently received a new microenterprise grant for $200,000. Environmental review is underway. Application period for prospective applicants will begin somewhere in February, most likely. We'll announce that on social media and the website when that begins. We also have a housing needs assessment. It's a $50,000 grant for a housing conditions assessment of the city's housing stock. We're currently working to get the grant agreement in place, and then we'll be issuing an RFP for a consultant to help us with that project. And then the Social Eats project, Social Eats 607, is a project on the east end of Main Street that has been funded. It's a $100,000 small business grant. The city assisted in obtaining. We're just waiting for the official award letter on that, and then we'll be moving forward. The community events programming, marketing, and promotion RFP we recently awarded to Destination Oneonta to provide the services that you all are familiar with Destination Oneonta providing over the last decade or more. We had a kickoff meeting today to discuss some initial things with DO. We're going to invite them to come to most likely the February 22nd CLIC meeting, Quality of Life and Infrastructure, to give a little presentation as to what their upcoming events that they are planning are going to be, and have a little back and forth, get some feedback from the council, and get those things scheduled. The library received a $500,000 EPF, that's Environmental Protection Fund grant from the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation and Historic Preservation for phase 2 of the Huntington Park improvement project. You'll see phase 1 is still ongoing. They did some work last fall. They have more work to do, and that should be completed phase 1 in 2022. Phase 2, I believe, they have 5 years to complete that, so we wouldn't expect to see any work on that this year. But if you want to check out what all that entails, on the library's website, they have a master plan that you can view. The finance department tax collection, yesterday was the last day for penalty-free tax collection. Ginny let me know just a minute ago that 70%, we've collected at least 70% of tax revenue so far, still more to be processed that has been received in the mail. That process continues through April 30th. And the 2021 financial audit has been scheduled. That's going to be happening in May. And so between now and then, the finance department will be preparing for that. It's quite a bit of work that goes into that. And water and sewer bills will be mailed out sometime in late February. And that was all I had tonight. A little bit longer than usual, but if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Greg? Yeah, well, thank you very much, Greg. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Which takes us to the mayor's remarks. And as you guys have been figuring out, I think as much as these are for council, they're really for the community. So, community, this is for you. I want you to picture this. A retiree teaches a group of young teens how to build bluebird houses for distribution to Oneonta families. And then the city reimburses his expense for the wood and the hardware and the paint. You get a group of hiking buddies, tired of navigating a muddy stretch on a favorite Oneonta trail. They pitch in to buy materials and build a series of boot-friendly bridges, and the city thanks them and pays their out-of-pocket. You got a quilting club. It donates a dozen hand-sewn blankets to the warming station, and the city reimburses the club for the fabric. You got a dozen neighbors. They turn a small disconnected parcel of city-owned property into a community garden, and the city reimburses the expense for the fencing and the rakes and the shovels and the fertilizer. New folks have moved in. That's 3 houses on the block this year. So a couple of families decide to get together and invite everyone on the street and in the local community to a block party to get to know one another. Well, the city closes the street and offsets the cost of food and entertainment with a small grant. A local agency looks at the entrance to the city and decides to create a year-round display to improve visitors' first impressions of our community. And the city supports them with reimbursements on their expensive. So these are half a dozen examples of the potential hundreds that creative and community-minded citizens might have to improve the quality of life in Oneonta. And pending council approval, the city, through the creation of a grant application program called the Community Enhancement Initiative, CEI, will be providing a fiscally responsible mechanism to empower everyday Oneontans in the improvement of the quality of life in their neighborhoods and in the city. I want to acknowledge the city administrator, the heads of community development and finance, and the city clerk for working as a team to navigate the various impediments to the creation of this program. This is a very outside the box idea, but they are championing it. With their continuing efforts, I am confident that we'll be able to present it to the council very soon. Now, as much as you, the Oneonta community, should be excited at the prospect of this grant program, I believe that you should be even more enthusiastic about the way your city is working as a team for everyone's benefit. It's what I promised, and it's happening, working as a team in city government and with the community. Wait to see all the things that we can do. And those end my remarks. So with that, we will now move to the consent agenda. Okay, where we have quite a number, I think 9, 10 on the consent agenda. And we'll start with number 1, the approval of the minutes. Motion that the Common Council approves the minutes of the regular meeting held January 18th, 2021. Approval of the warrants. Motion that the Common Council approves the warrants totaling $718,795.59, and that the same be placed on the Director of Finance's desk for payment as presented. This is from the Finance Human Resources Committee. Number 3, motion that the Common Council authorizes the waiver of local procurement procedures as a result of the sole source provision of risk management tools for public safety organizations. Lexipol offers subscription-based policy management and training. The Common Council further authorizes the mayor to execute an agreement with Lexipol, subject to the approval by the city attorney, for an annual subscription fee of $11,010.90 and a one-time implementation fee of $26,658. This contract shall renew in successive one-year periods thereafter, unless one party provides written notice of termination. Number 4, that the Common Council authorizes the mayor to execute a memorandum of agreement with the United Federation of Police Officers, Inc., affiliated Local 408, City of Oneonta Police Sergeants Association, to extend the terms of the current collective bargaining agreement, including any previously executed memorandums of agreement or understanding, for a period of 1 year, January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022, as presented. Number 5, motion that the Common Council authorizes the mayor to execute a memorandum of agreement with the United Federation of Police Officers, Incorporated, affiliated Local 408, City of Oneonta Police Sergeants Association, to modify the terms of the collective bargaining agreement, Article 15, Section 3, to provide a selection between the CSEA Employee Benefit Fund Horizon Dental Plan and the Excellus Dental Blue Options Plan. Number 6, that the Common Council authorizes the mayor to grant a permanent easement to New York State Electric and Gas, NYSEG, to install its underground electric facilities on city-owned parcel ID number 300.6-1-7.1 for the purposes of providing electric service to the adjacent Deet Street Lofts housing development. This item is subject to review by the city attorney. Number 7, motion that the Common Council authorizes the mayor to grant a permanent easement to New York State Electric and Gas, NYSEG, to install a pole to pole guying anchor on city-owned parcel ID 288.14-3-74.1 for the purposes of supporting existing electric facilities in Lower Wilbur Park. This item is subject to review by the city attorney. 8, motion that the Common Council authorizes the submission of grant application to the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response SAFER program as administered by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, DHS, Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, for the reimbursement of salary and benefits for up to 8 full-time firefighters at an estimated cost of $2.2 million. From the Legislative Committee on the agenda, number 9, motion that the Common Council approves the ordinance which would amend Chapter 210-7 of the City of Oneonta Municipal Code to include the addition of subsection G, which would establish a time limit for the application of the license following a successful exam attempt. This ordinance was laid electronically on January 12th, 2022. And finally, number 10, motion that the Common Council concurs with the mayor's recommendation and approves the following appointment to a city commission, the Housing Commission. Rachel Lutz Jessup, Rachel. July 6th, 2022 is when that appointment would expire. And that is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? Katie, and do I have a second? I'm sorry.
Wait, Mark, you want to ask if any can be removed?
Yep.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, thank you so much. You don't expect me to have this right by the 3rd. So who here would like to remove anything from the agenda? Luke.
Number 3, number 8, please.
Number 3 and number 8. And then do we have anybody else? Okay. So with that, minus number 3 and number 8, do I have a motion to approve? And that's Mark Davies, and then Katie follows. And with that, then do I have a vote? Do you want to call the roll?
Councilmember Murphy,
Aye.
Councilmember Davies,
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger,
Yes.
Councilmember Lepari-Shu, Councilmember Lepari-Shu,
Aye.
Councilmember Carson,
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington,
Aye.
Councilmember Raptor,
Yes.
Councilmember Falco.
Aye.
Passed.
Okay, so thank you very much. Those are approved, and now we go to motion number 3. And it was Luke that pulled that, am I right? Yes. And Luke, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I guess my question is, this is for the chiefs as well as Greg. I think we touched on this briefly about how this is going to streamline a lot of the things that are done at the department. I was just hoping, if you don't mind, spending a couple of minutes just explaining a little bit more about it. Is my memory correct? Is that going to help it streamline things administratively?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. One of the things that it's designed to do is provide us with a single source solution for policy and procedure that's written by subject matter experts and legal scholars within the state of New York. It will provide us with near instantaneous changes in policy as legislation's approved in Albany. The policies would be implemented within that week. Generally, I think they said the policies are drafted and ready to go within 72 hours of the legislation changes. So this is something that's going to keep us much more up to date on policy changes, much more up to date on trends in policing and best practices. So I think this is very much in line with the Community Advisory Board, and something that when we had discussions regarding best practices came up, and I wanted to see if there were a way we could do better than accreditation. I think this is the answer to that question.
Great, thank you, Chief.
Any other questions or comments? And of course, I've taken this out of its, I saw David Mertzig jump right on. I took it out of its proper sequence. I should have asked for the motion to approve before we hit discussion. So I'm going to, right? What are you going to do? All right, so let me ask now retroactively for a motion to approve, and then we'll go to a vote. Luke, and then Scott, thank you very much. And then with that, Carrie, I think we can call the roll.
Councilmember Murphy,
Aye.
Councilmember Davies,
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger,
Yes.
Councilmember Lepari-Shu,
Aye.
Councilmember Carson,
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington,
Aye.
Councilmember Rafter,
Aye.
Councilmember Falco.
Aye.
Passed.
All right, thank you very much. So that has carried, and then I'm looking for motion to approve motion 8, and I have Scott and I have Len. Thank you very much. And then Luke, you're the one who pulled this as well.
Yeah, Len, I know you talked about this a little bit. It's just I've been chewing on it a little bit more as we've talked. The 8 additional firefighters that we would be paying for with the grant for 2.2 million. What would they be hired with the knowledge that this is a temporary position, because these wouldn't be an additional 8 permanent, correct? I'm just trying to think.
Correct. As in, to the point that I can tell you that I think we talked about it in the finance committee meeting. There's currently 1 firefighter just retired, and we have 2 more that are scheduled to retire in June. So potentially, these are looking at replacements. But I think to speak a little bit better to your questions, why don't we let the city administrator answer that?
Thanks, Len. I think maybe it'd be good for the whole council if Chief Knapp would just kind of run through what the intent of the grant application and what these firefighters would be doing. I think he could probably explain it best. Brian, if you would.
Thanks, Greg. And thanks for the question, Luke. At the beginning of the year, you guys kind of tasked us with potentially finding some new revenue sources. Also, I think it's no secret to anyone in the room other than maybe Councilmember Falco that for years we've been attempting to add staff or add personnel to the department. So Assistant Chief Foster and I kind of took that and ran with it, and we were trying to brainstorm how we could add additional staff and be able to potentially fund it. So one of the things we kept coming back to was potentially talking to Fox Hospital to enter into an agreement to do their transports. We initially had set up a meeting with them. They were highly interested in that because that's a service that they're in need of. So we moved on from there, and we had a second meeting to where they started providing us with some numbers. They provided us with 4 years of statistics, call volume data. We took that and then we put our numbers to it. And there's a potential for this to be a cash flow positive venture. The 8 additional staff would run that ambulance for a 12-hour period, and then they would be available to us for the rest of the shift. And we've also in our meeting, we would word the contract so that if, say for instance, we were to have a structure fire and those 2 staff members weren't on a transport, they wouldn't be committed just to Fox Hospital. We could use them to better serve our community. So it's really a partnership for both sides that we're looking to get a contract.
Thanks, Chief. And I appreciate, I know it's a heavy charge, being more efficient when there's a need for more staff. So I appreciate you looking at avenues, you and Greg, for this.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could just jump in as well, just to be clear, what the council is being asked tonight is for approval to apply for this grant. I don't know the exact timeline for finding out whether we are awarded that grant. I imagine it'll be months, certainly not weeks. This would not be the council's final opportunity to approve or not approve the concept of adding 8 additional firefighters. That would happen down the road. We wouldn't accept this grant until we're certain of how this business model, for lack of a better term, would work out. We'll have more discussions on that as Brian and Tim and I and Jenny in finance, really dive into this as we have been, but we've got some more work to do, more conversations to be had on many levels before, we're ready to pull the trigger on something like this. But the reason that it may seem like a little bit of a rush as far as the grant is just the grant timeline itself. It's due the end of this week. And if we don't apply now, it could be a missed opportunity if we do decide to go forward with this. Obviously, if we were awarded $2.2 million for hiring 8 firefighters, and we were to determine that hiring those 8 firefighters made sense for the services we want to provide, then, that's a big help. I will not recommend going forward with any such hires if it doesn't make sense long-term for the city. And that's obviously the key thing that Brian and Tim have been working hard on with Fox Hospital to figure out how that might work for everyone. So I want you to rest assured that there's going to be more conversation about this, and that applying for the grant does not commit us to hiring 8 firefighters at this time.
Thanks, Greg, for answering the question I was trying to also ask. So
Sure.
Got it. Thank you.
Mark Davies.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to thank Chief Knapp for kind of this creative approach to a particular problem. You've come in and really kind of hit the ground running and thinking outside the box in terms of how we might address this. So I appreciate this attempt, and pushing this grant forward is going to be a huge task. So thank you, and thank you, City Administrator Mattice, as well as everyone else who's been working on this, if we are to vote for this.
Any other comments? Okay. With that, then, did I say anything? No, I don't. Okay. And with that, then, Carrie, I think we can call the roll.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember Lepari-Shu?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco?
Aye.
Passes.
Terrific. Thank you. All right. That takes us to motion number 11 for discussion. And that is that the Common Council concurs with the mayor's recommendation and approves the following appointment to a city board. For the HML Board of Trustees, that's the Huntington Memorial Library Board of Trustees, Diane Aronson, for an appointment expiration date of February 1st, 2027. Do I have a motion to approve? I think I see Mark Davies and I think I see Scott, so I'm going to say that I do. And discussion, anyone? Luke?
Yes, I would just like to say that I know Diane Aronson. She's in the first board. She's a delightful person, and I'm excited to see her on the board, hopefully.
Okay. Any other voices to discussion here? None. All right. In that case, Carrie, if you'd call the roll.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember Laparishu?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco?
Aye.
Passes.
Wonderful. Terrific. Taking us now to motion number 12, that the Common Council approves the street closure application received by the Oneonta branch of the NAACP for February 26, 2022, as presented, with the exception that Main Street is to be closed from Chestnut Street to Elm Street instead, and that there be no obstruction in the eastbound lane. Do I have a motion to approve? Luke Murphy and Dave Risberger, thank you. Do we have discussion on the topic? We do not, doesn't appear. So with that, Carrie?
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger? Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember Laparishu?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. I'm hoping I didn't miss a question from you, Len.
Yeah, you did, Mark. It was just that I didn't understand why they only wanted the westbound lane closed and not the eastbound.
It wasn't their call. That was a concern of the city, and I don't know if that might have been the fire department or the police department. And I wonder, Greg, if you can speak to that.
Yeah, just to clarify, the whole width of the street, traffic in both directions will be closed. It's just it's a request to the fire and police department, I think, primarily to have emergency vehicle access on one lane. So they're going to keep the event to one side of the street. Is that correct, Carrie? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, exactly. It allows the emergency vehicles to get down without having to remove items other than persons from the street. So any tables or anything.
Thank you for answering.
Sure. Sorry, I missed you there, Len. All right. So, yes, David.
Follow-up question. Greg, is that something that's new? Because I know that's not anything that used to happen with like the Grand and Glorious garage sale.
It's been a request in recent, events that have come up. I think it's obviously a best practice where, if at all possible, if we can keep a lane clear, that, that makes the most sense for everyone. I don't know if Chief Knapp wants to speak any more to that off the cuff, but that's my understanding of it.
Yeah, I'm fine discussing that. I think it's important that we have access to the businesses and the people that live above the businesses on Main Street. We have to park an ambulance 2 blocks away. That could significantly delay a service to someone that's, say, in cardiac arrest, or heaven forbid, there's a fire on Main Street. If we have to move all that stuff, we might end up with a parking lot because we can't get in there quick enough. So just something that I thought of, and I'm going to try and push.
I think if that's going to be the regular way we're going to go about it, and I don't disagree with you. I think we need to let groups know moving forward for the bigger events like the Grand and Glorious, when we go back to having that, and also any arts festival that we have, so they're not surprised by it. Because I know at least with the Grand and Glorious, it'll impact how they do their setup.
Yeah, just a little background on that. It has been done in past years to always, whether it was on the left or on the right, or keeping a lane, the width clear in the center. That has been something that's been done over the years. I don't know if it's ever made a public or a specific policy, but I know that every fire chief has requested it over the years for multiple events to keep an emergency lane available through Main Street. So if we're going to formalize it, that's fine, but it isn't something that was just made up. So
that's fine. We just never have talked about it before. So
yeah,
I can tell you that practically speaking, from the perspective of having been involved in all of these summer street closures, we were also dealing with that, trying to keep a lane open. And what that wound up being was, realistically, it meant just making sure that you didn't have something that couldn't be broken down in a hurry. So we might put some chairs or something into the path, but they would be things that you could just pick up and move quickly, but nothing that was going to create a substantial blockage. And so we were able to do it, and I suspect it's probably something with some strategizing most groups will be able to do. Okay, moving on now to the last motion from the Finance and Human Resources folks, good folks there. We have motion number 13 that the Common Council appoints Maureen Seymour to the position of Engineering GIS Technician at a base salary of $65,000, Administrative Personnel Manual Grade A2, effective February 22nd, 2022, subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service requirements. And do I have a motion to approve? I have one from Katie. I have one follows from Dave Risberger. And do we have discussion on that? Scott?
Yeah, sorry, my camera's on one screen and you guys are on the other, so I don't know where to wave. First of all, this didn't come through our regular Finance and Human Resources committee at our meeting. I know we've been looking at this position for a while, and I see we got, this email came out at a little after 5 o'clock, and my thing is looking at the big picture. And I've always been a stickler, and I've always brought this up, as I'm worried about our personal services line. I'm worried about how we start them out at a high salary. And with that, and looking at the future of the city and stuff, it's nothing against the employee, but just the way it's come about and stuff like that, I am not going to be supporting this tonight.
Do we have any further discussion? All right. In that case, Carrie, can we take the roll?
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember Lepari-Shu?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
No.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco?
Aye.
Passes.
Okay, well, that passes, and that concludes our agenda, and we'll move on now to additional business and or council discussion. Does anybody have anything for the good of the group? And that's David Risberger.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just have a follow-up question on your discussion that you started with your statement or at the beginning of the meeting about the community initiative program, or what was the initiative program. I realize you haven't finalized it yet, but with this grant that you're talking about, where is the money going to be coming from to fund the grant? And well, where's the money coming to fund the grant, or what are we looking at? Or is it an existing grant that we weren't aware of?
This is the Community Engagement Initiative Fund that we had talked about a couple of months ago. It's gone through some metamorphosis, but I'd like to ask Greg, maybe we can have Ginny kind of bring us up to speed on what we're looking at as the funding mechanism, and also the the percentage relative to, again, we were looking at being an indicator of our healthy unrestricted reserve funds. Greg?
Sure. Ginny, I'll let you jump in just a second, but just in general, as the mayor mentioned at the beginning, this is by no means a done deal as far as the details of the program. And I hate to use the phrase, but the devil's in the details, and we're still working through exactly how this could work. We haven't found a solution yet. We are, looking at all sort of funding sources. One source that we had considered was the source that had previously been mentioned last fall when we were discussing the pool grant. If you remember, there was discussion about old program income funds that Ginny can describe in better detail than I in just a moment, but that's one potential source. The mayor had mentioned the general fund. We've ruled that out as a source. We can't use the general fund for the grant program as described. We do think there are some options that if we couldn't use that program income, that we could, maybe massage the grant program a bit, change it around slightly to try to make something work. We're certainly committed to the spirit of it. But Jenny, if you want to jump in and maybe talk about where we're at right now, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Mayor. Yes, as Greg said, that we have researched different funding options and have ruled out the general fund. And we are going to be meeting with HUD officials from the Buffalo office and the state offices later this week to discuss the program guidelines and what they would approve. And as Judy has mentioned in the past, and I think it was also mentioned earlier in this meeting with Len, we have criteria that we need to meet because of our low to moderate income ratios. Again, we need to get the state agencies and the federal agencies to give us the blessing of, how to work on the grant program itself. And once we get all of these details worked out, and once we know what we can offer the council for consideration of what is considered proper public service and what we can do with the grants, we will definitely bring it through the finance committee and then to the council for full approval. It's just going to take us some time. We have as we all know, when it comes to taxpayers' money, we have a lot of guidelines that we need to follow. And so we'll be bringing it to you as soon as we know what we can actually do.
Thank you. Any other discussion on that topic? Or Dave, did you want to jump back in?
Well, I missed some of that because it looked like, I think my internet was freezing up as Vinny was talking. So, I mean, I like the spirit of it. There's some things I've got a lot of questions about, especially since it's tax money that we're talking about using. So, I also, I don't want our staff to be overwhelmed with their other work while they're also working on this. And possibly even working on this and there not really being an answer for what we're looking to do. So I guess I will, I look forward to hearing what progress is made in 2 weeks. How about that?
Good. I appreciate that. And I just want to, for those who, I think every council member is fairly well with, clear on what the intention and direction is on this from these many discussions I've had over the course of the last several months. But to remind too, this is also a means of creating marketable assets in our campaign to recruit the 1,000, working young families that we've been talking about again these last several months. In that we are going to be able to provide quality of life assets to our campaign, and it'll be something that is continuing and growing and documentable and promotable. So there's a lot of ROI as they return on investment on this effort and what monies might be used. And again, although we're not pulling it from the unrestricted reserves, we're using the unrestricted reserves as a calibration mechanism for the percentage of less than just actually 0.75%. so that we have kind of a number that is a reasonable and fiscally responsible one to work with. So we'll continue. Again, my appreciation, it knows no bounds for the work that Ginny and Greg and Judy are doing, and Kerry in the other room toward making this thing happen. It is outside the box, certainly, but like I said, the ROI on it, the return on investment, is absolutely significant. So, any other discussion? No. Okay. In that case, Kerry, do we have any correspondence?
There is no correspondence.
And I don't believe there's a need for an executive session unless somebody feels that there is.
No, Mayor, just the question I asked earlier.
Oh, yeah. It was
I don't know if that's executive session or not.
No, I don't think so. I think we can answer that. Katie Becker, there's a document that is due to you like now that has been electronically produced with fields to fill in, and one of our council members has had some issues around technology. I'm not going to say his name's Scott. So the question is it something, actually, Scott, why don't you ask the question?
Well, Katie, I was dumb. I didn't read your email all the way through. I didn't download it, and I filled it all out, so I can't like send it in to you. Is it all right to print it off and either drop it off, or do I print it off and scan it to you?
Either one is fine, Scott. Whatever gets it into my office is fine.
Okay.
Okay, so go ahead, Dave.
One more question for Katie. Katie, I sent you a copy of that before I got the final version. Do you need me to redo it?
Nope, there were no differences because I did not get any additional council feedback, so there were no changes between the two versions. The only difference was one was a fillable PDF and the other one was a Word version. So they're the exact same document.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Katie while we have her here? No. In that case, again, we don't have a need for executive session. We've determined that this wasn't needed. And with that, I think we can say, wait, actually. We can say meeting adjourned.
Night, everybody.